I reviewed the Black Titanium Sapphire version of the Garmin Epix 2 when it first came out a little over a year ago, and then I ordered this white one shortly thereafter. And for a long time, it was my favorite watch that I owned. And then Garmin released the Forerunner 955 with HRV status and a new morning report feature, and I found myself missing that morning report feature anytime I switched away from it. Now, eventually Garmin did update the entire Phoenix series of watches. That's watches like this Garmin Epix Gen 2, as well as the Enduro 2, the Tactics, and that Mark Gen 2 series of watches. But they updated it to include every single feature found on the Garmin Forerunner 955 and more. So in this video, we'll talk about some of the updated features that I found exciting on this Garmin Epix 2, but we'll also look at the durability of this device, how it's been holding up after lots of swimming, biking, and running, and we'll also take a quick look at heart rate and GPS accuracy of this watch that has multi-band GPS. And I'll give you my overall opinion on the Garmin Epix Gen 2 after having used it for a little over a year. Now, if you're not familiar with the Garmin Epix Gen 2, it was announced alongside the Fenix 7 a year ago, and like the Enduro 2 and the Tactics and the Mark series of devices, under the hood, it's basically a Fenix 7. But the Epix Gen 2's main difference is that it has this bright AMOLED display, and it's a 1.3-inch touchscreen display with 1000 nit brightness, 416 by 416 pixels, and you can really see the difference in resolutions when you're comparing this watch to any sort of non-AMOLED display. I actually think that the morning report graphics and animations look more detailed on this device. But the AMOLED screen does take a hit on battery life. You can expect about 5 to 6 days with the screen set to always on, or about 16 to 17 days if you set it to raise to wake. And then when using GPS, you can get well over 24 hours of battery life with this watch. And depending on how fast you are, you'd probably be okay to finish a 100-mile ultra run with this Epix without having to change too many settings. I tend to put this watch into auto select GPS mode. It's a new feature. It wasn't available when it first launched, but it'll automatically switch between GPS modes based on your environment. So if that GPS signal starts to get weak, it might enable the more battery intensive dual frequency GPS mode, meaning it can connect to multiple types of GPS systems at the same time to increase accuracy. And the Garmin Epix 2 comes in two varieties. It has a titanium sapphire edition, and it comes in either a white or a black color, and it costs $1,000. And the Epix also comes in a stainless steel option with Corning Gorilla Glass that costs $900. The titanium edition that I have here also has more memory. It's 32 gigs versus 16 gigs on the stainless steel. Now, either way, the watch is 46 millimeters in width and 15.4 millimeters in depth. Remember, I always think that depth is where the watch ends up feeling more bulky if it's tight on your wrist versus if it kind of sticks up higher off your wrist. And the titanium version weighs about 71 grams, which is about 5 or 6 grams less than the stainless steel option. Now, I'd say that the Epix 2 has held up pretty well against the occasional knocks and everyday wear kind of stuff. And then I've mostly been swimming, biking, and running with this watch. And I do see a few scratches and marks on that titanium bezel and also on that back plate of the watch, which is also titanium. It's not bad. I don't think you would notice it unless, I was really trying to show it to you using some macro lenses and things like that. But the sapphire lens has held up extremely well. I don't actually see any scratches or nicks in that display at all. And I can't speak for the steel variety of the watch either, although I would assume that it would show a few more scratches on that top bezel, and that screen could warrant a screen protector or something like that to protect it from scratches. And it also might be worth checking the comment section of this video, because typically people are really nice in this little community that we have, and they'll chime in with their own personal experience with this particular watch and how it's kind of holding up for them personally. Now, I'm not 100% sure that the white watch band was a smart choice. It's showing a little bit of discoloration after a year here. Hopefully I can show that on camera. It's a little bit tricky. It's not super bad, but I definitely figured that I'd mention it in this little durability section here. But since I've had this Epix Gen 2, Garmin has actually worked pretty hard to make it better. They've updated this watch to include HRV and that, coveted morning report feature that I mentioned before. Now Garmin has updated the Epix here, as well as the whole Fenix series of watches, to also include jet lag advisor, new sports activity types, and something called Physio True-Up improvements. And Physio True-Up is just the name that Garmin has given to the functionality where Garmin can sync training health metrics from device to device. So for example, if you do some work on your Garmin Edge cycling computer, it'll automatically sync to your other Garmin watches to help predict your need for rest or your strain status, or now HRV status, which used to be very device specific, and it would take 2 or 3 weeks to establish a baseline for your HRV. And if you switched watches, like I do very frequently, having that HRV have to be reestablished each time was a bit of a pain. Garmin has also updated this watch with wrist-based running power and grade adjusted pace. And I mentioned the morning report, but I also have to mention that I love the way that the Epix displays that morning report. It has this kind of intro animation screen. It's definitely sharper on the Epix than some of the other devices. And you'll see that training readiness score, which is basically a combination of a whole bunch of metrics to give you a score between 0 and 100 on how ready you are to take on hard workouts. But it's looking at your HRV, your heart rate variability, your sleep, your previous workouts, and your stress. It all is taken into account to give you that overall training readiness score. And Garmin has also added auto rest for ultra running activities. So if ultra running is your thing and you use rest areas, you'll appreciate that. And then Garmin has increased the accuracy of those daily suggested workouts. And it'll now also include rest days leading up to your race and not suggest a workout on your race day. And then there's also been just a few subtle updates. There's a little bit of haptic feedback when you scroll through the widget screen. Also on that quick menu, if you scroll through that, you'll feel a little bit of haptic feedback as well. And there are a few updates that I haven't really played around with or tested, and I don't really plan to. There's a new sail expedition activity type for multi-day sailing activities. It sets the GPS track points to once an hour by default, just to conserve battery life. There's also a backcountry ski, backcountry snowboarding improvements where the ascent and descent are automatically detected. Lastly, there's a wakeboard, wake surf, water ski, a new tube activity type where the watch will auto detect when you're on a run or when you're waiting for a boat. Now, I've had 0 issues with GPS data accuracy with the Garmin Epix. If you remember, this is one of the first watches that supported Garmin's multi-band GPS chip. And the only change that I've really made since buying this new Epix is just that now, instead of using the all satellite plus multi-band for the most accurate GPS settings, I've switched to using something called auto select, where it'll detect the GPS signal strength, and it'll only kick into that all satellites plus multi-band when it's needed, which is probably pretty rare. And it does that to save a fair amount of battery life. But no issues whatsoever with GPS accuracy. This is the Apple Watch Ultra in purple, the 955 in red, and the Epix in light blue. And I think, if you take a quick look around, you really won't find any issues with really any of these GPS tracks. They're all pretty amazing, really amongst the best that I've really ever tested on this channel. And then if we look at heart rate data, optical heart rate monitors, they do always tend to take a little bit of time to just lock on to the beat. And then here the Epix is in light blue. The Garmin Forerunner 745 is actually attached to an ECG style chest strap. That's really the most accurate way to kind of keep track of your heart rate. And you can kind of see a few times where it'll lag a little bit, especially when the actual heart rate dips or spikes. But for the most part, for the most of this run, it looks pretty good here. So if you guys are considering the Epix 2 for yourself, it's definitely not durability, it's definitely not data accuracy that I would be concerned about. I'd say that this watch is fantastic in those regards. The only thing that I might be slightly hesitant about is the fact that this watch is a year old now, and Garmin could update it with some sort of Epix Gen 3, really at any moment. Now, to be clear, I haven't seen any rumors really pointing towards an update, so you're probably safe. But after Garmin's update of the Forerunner 200 series and 900 series after just 9 months, I am a little bit gun shy or a little bit leery of making buying suggestions. How about you guys? Is this a watch that you've tried? What are your thoughts about it? You know, I'm always game to continue this discussion down in the comment section if you guys are. Most importantly, make sure that you guys are getting out there, swimming, biking, running, rinsing, and repeating it all over again. I think it's the rinsing part that I probably need to work on the most.